Impassioned pleas from both sides as the EU referendum campaign resumes with just days to go before the crucial vote. David Cameron faced a public grilling on television, invoking the spirit of Churchill and urging voters not to give up on the European Union.
I don't think Britain, at the end, is a quitter. I think we stay and fight. That's what we should do. That's what made our country great. And that's how we'll be great in the future.
But the Vote Leave campaign says Britain now has a golden opportunity to regain its sovereignty.
Let's do this thing, my friends. Let's do it together. Let's take back control, vote Leave, and protect our great democracy.
Tributes at church services today for the MP Jo Cox, who died after being attacked in her West Yorkshire constituency. A year on, we join one British survivor of the terror attacks in Tunisia as he goes on a journey of healing to the scene where 38 people died. And warming up nicely for Wimbledon, Andy Murray wins a record 5th title at Queen's Club in London. A very good evening to you. David Cameron has urged voters to stay and fight inside the European Union, warning that quitting would have a huge effect on our lives and opportunities. The Prime Minister's plea on the BBC's Question Time tonight came as the referendum campaign resumed following a suspension in the wake of the killing of the Labour MP Jo Cox. Mr Cameron was questioned repeatedly by the audience about immigration, admitting controlling the numbers coming in was very challenging. Our Deputy Political Editor John Pienaar has more.
He's back, the respectful pause over, picking up where he left off. The campaign was halted by a tragic death, but now the message was charged with emotion, ready for tonight's live audience. His first words, respect for Jo Cox, but respect and politics, with barely a breath between. 2
children have lost their mother, a loving husband has lost his wife, and my heart breaks when I think of them and what they're going through. And I think the most important thing for the politicians is to remember what she was all about, which was service, community, tolerance. Wherever we see intolerance, hatred, division, we should try and drive it out of our communities, out of our public life.
So the tribute was also a call to vote Remain, and there wasn't much respect for what some saw as scare stories that had gone too far.
Do you think by comparing the EU referendum to ISIS, though, you're merely scaremongering rather than just portraying the facts?
I was simply saying that I think one of the strongest arguments for remaining in the European Union is that we're stronger together.
He talked economic risk, audience members talked migration.
You're not doing anything to counterbalance all the immigration coming into these services.
The questions kept coming.
Europeans come here because they see the problem at home.
And the target of migration below 100,000 a year now just an ambition.
I believe that immigration, net migration, on that scale, is the right ambition for our country.
Is it your target? Because you see a lot of people say that your failure to hit that target is what has exacerbated the argument about immigration.
There are good ways of controlling immigration, and these welfare changes, I think, are good ways. There are bad ways of controlling immigration, and that, I think, would be leaving the single market, damaging our economy.
Then a moment of drama, head-to-head about his place in history. Was he an EU appeaser? Would his EU deal be torn up?
Are you really the 21st century Neville Chamberlain waving a piece of paper in the air, saying to the public, I have this promise where a dictatorship in Europe can overrule it?
No, not an appeaser, a famous warrior.
At my office, I sit 2 yards away from the cabinet room where Winston Churchill decided in May 1940 to fight on against Hitler, the best and greatest decision perhaps anyone's ever made in our country. He didn't quit on Europe, he didn't quit on European democracy, he didn't quit on European freedom. We want to fight for those things today. And you can't win, you can't fight if you're not in the room.
And that aggression was turned on the Leave side, and 3 big campaign lines he painted as campaign lies.
Turkey's going to join the EU, not true. There's going to be a European army with Britain in it, not true. And we give £350 million a week to Brussels, not true. Now look, if we want to vote to leave this organisation, let's vote to leave it, but let's not do it on the basis of 3 things that are completely untrue. Thanks very much. Sorry, we didn't really have
David Cameron's gambling everything on Britain choosing to remain through fear of economic risk. If voters want out, he seems determined to stay on, but senior colleagues are just as convinced it'll be time to say goodbye. John Pienaar, BBC News, Milton Keynes.
Well, immigration featured heavily during campaigning today, and there were signs of a difference in tone within the Leave camp. Boris Johnson said he was in favour of an amnesty for illegal immigrants who'd been in the UK for more than 12 years, while Nigel Farage defended a controversial UKIP poster unveiled last week, showing a queue of migrants and the slogan "Breaking Point." Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
The hurly-burly has returned to the campaign trail. And on this Father's Day, here's one dad who didn't spend the morning with his son.
You have done a great job because you have put on the table key issues.
While Stanley Johnson roused the Remain campaign in Hyde Park, Boris Johnson rallied Leave campaigners on the other side of London.
Take back control of huge sums of money.
As this bitterly fought referendum enters its final days, immigration has again dominated the debate. But from the Leave campaign, a change of tone.
Because I am pro-immigration, my friends. I'm the proud descendant of Turkish immigrants. And let me stun you, perhaps, by saying that I will go further. I'm not only pro-immigration, I'm pro-immigrants, and I am in favour of an amnesty for illegal immigrants who have been here for more than 12 years.
This is a Leave campaign now straining not to sound divisive or inflammatory on the issue at the heart of their case for leaving the EU. Why? In part because of this. A poster unveiled by UKIP last week showing migrants walking to a refugee camp in Slovenia. It has drawn criticism from the official Vote Leave campaign.
Well, when I saw that poster, I shuddered. I am pro-migration, but I believe that the way in which we secure public support for the continued benefits that migration brings, and the way in which we secure public support for helping refugees in need, is if people feel that they can control the numbers overall coming here.
This morning, UKIP's leader stood by his poster, but said the atmosphere of the referendum had changed because of the death of Joe Cox last week.
I wish an innocent member of Parliament had not been gunned down in the street. OK? That's the point. And frankly...
I think we all wish that, of course we do.
Had that not happened, I don't think we would have had the kind of row that we've had over it.
Today, Labour's leader defended EU migration and said pressure on infrastructure and services was a failure of government. He was asked if there could be an upper limit to migration numbers with Britain in the EU.
I don't think you can have one within while you have a free movement of labour, and I think the free movement of labour means that you have to balance the economy, so you have to improve living standards and conditions.
The Chancellor, George Osborne, said legitimate concerns about immigration were being felt in every Western country, but that this referendum had to be about the economy.
Rich international investors are taking their money out of Britain at the moment, right? They're delaying investment, the stock market's gone down, sterling is being marked down. The British people can't take their money out of Britain. They'll be left with their money and their livelihoods in Britain on Friday next week if we vote to leave, and they will be the people paying the price.
As this Vote Leave rally shows, this campaign will be hard fought until the end, because there's one point both sides agree on, that this week's vote is a massive choice, an irreversible decision about the future direction of our country. After a sombre three-day pause, this referendum campaign is back at full pelt, and soon you will have your say. Ben Wright, BBC News.
Well, our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, is with me now. 4 days to go, Laura, before the public decides. What's your reading of where the campaigns are as we enter this final week?
Well, I think we saw David Cameron really fighting for this vote tonight. It's definitely, we're in the sort of last-ditch efforts on both sides. And the Prime Minister, of course, is also fighting for his career. But this decision is much bigger than any one politician, any one political party. It will have a huge influence on all of our futures, not just this year, not just in 5 years, but for decades to come. And whatever we decide will also have a profound impact around the continent, around the rest of the European Union too. And there are a few interesting things about this. Nobody expected a few months ago at the beginning of this campaign that it would feel so close in these closing days. And both of the main parties have found it hard to grapple with this big question. I think many big political players have been quite surprised by how the fact it's been so difficult to get voters to listen to what they're saying. And, you know, the possibility that we might actually vote to leave has rather crept up on the political class. And I think whatever the result is, that raises questions for what our politics will look like in the months and years after the vote. Yes, the main clashes between the politicians have been about the economy and about immigration. But this is something bigger than this. This is about our whole identity and whether we are ready to tear up the settlement that we've had with our continental neighbours for decades and try to make something new. And, you know, tonight, nobody knows what is going to happen. The result is hugely unclear and so much is still in play.
Sure. OK, Laura, thanks for that. Laura Kuhnsberg there. Moving tributes have been paid to the MP Jo Cox at church services in Birstall in West Yorkshire, where she was shot and stabbed on Thursday. In one sermon, she was described as a 21st century Good Samaritan and passionate advocate for the poor. The man accused of her murder, Thomas Mair, will appear at the Old Bailey tomorrow. Here's Ed Thomas.
It's 4 days since this town lost its MP. A husband lost his wife, and 2 young children lost their mother. And still the flowers arrive. A place to reflect on Jo Cox's life and the values she lived for.
She represented love and peace all round for all the religions and all the culture. It doesn't matter what colour you are, what creed you are, whatever you are from.
But I just hope it brings the community together and that what she fought for, people continue to fight for.
And today Jo Cox was remembered at St Peter's Anglican Church in Birstall, the town she served, the place she called home.
Her humanity was powerful and compelling, and we would do well to recognise her as an amazing example, a 21st century Good Samaritan.
And today this message from Brendan Cox, Jo's husband. He said the outpouring of love to our family has been humbling. Thank you, and for supporting her causes. He said Jo loved camping. Last night the kids and I camped in her memory and remembered the last time we were all woken by the dawn chorus. Already, a memorial fund in Jo's name has raised more than £600,000. What's striking here is not just the number of flowers that have been brought down here, it's the messages that come with them. They're personal, they're genuine, and they tell the story of how Jo Cox connected with them. An MP who spoke to many.
Just someone who represented everyone and someone who could represent what Britain should be about, and it's been a big loss.
And tomorrow Parliament will be recalled. MPs from all sides will come together to speak of a friend and colleague, a symbol of unity for Jo Cox. Ed Thomas, BBC News, Birstall.
3 12-year-old girls being treated in hospital after taking ecstasy pills in Salford are said to be in a stable condition tonight. A man and a woman have been arrested on suspicion of being in possession of a controlled substance. Now, it's almost a year since a gunman opened fire on a beach in Tunisia, killing 38 tourists, 30 of whom were from the UK. It was the greatest loss of British life in a terror attack since the London bombings in 2005. The so-called Islamic State claimed responsibility for the assault on the resort of Sousse. One survivor, Colin Bidwell from Sussex, wanted to return to Tunisia, and the BBC took him back for what he called a journey of healing. Our correspondent, Orla Gearin, has this special report.
Right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Psyching himself up to face the past and all its trauma. Colin Bidwell returns to the Imperial Marhaba Hotel. A difficult journey that he wanted to make. Amateur footage captured the chaos. And here the gunman stalking the shore where Colin and his wife Chris lay sunbathing. He leads me to the beach, which became a killing ground.
I just had my headphones on, just heard some sounds, just thought fireworks like everyone else did. I just turned, looked at my wife on the sunbed next to me, and she was already off the sunbed, running in that direction. I just decided to run straight down the beach into the sea. I could still hear everything still going on. You never forget that sound. You never forget the sound. What can I say?
Then a reunion with Mohammed Ben Saad.
Thank you. Thank you.
He rescued Colin and other tourists from the sea.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
for what you did.
You're welcome.
It was a very good thing you did for me. Thank you. You saved my life. I think I was here, wasn't I?
Yeah. But I told you because you are...
I know.
Only when Colin was pulled from the water, he realised he'd been grazed by 2 bullets.
You pulled me up there.
Yeah.
That's where I was.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Mohammed.
At the local hospital, he searches for the wards where he and other victims were treated by staff who were in shock themselves.
I heard someone firing a gun.
This was Colin just after the attack. Now he's here with a message of gratitude.
Just to say thank you very much from everybody, from the survivors that you treated here. We were so sorry. So are we.
Back at the beach, Colin is hoping there will be a full recovery for the victims and for Tunisia.
I hope and pray it becomes a safe country, that other people can come back here and help the economy, because the economy's been ruined just because of one person. And there's still a lot of survivors that would be scared to come back, and I understand that, and I was scared coming here. But for me, it was a process. I had to do it. I had to process it to put me in a better place where I am today.
But for Colin and other survivors, nothing can wash away the horror of what happened on the golden sands of Sousse. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Tunisia.
Now, with all the day's sport, here's Catherine Downs at the BBC Sports Centre. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Clive. Good evening. Andy Murray has become the first man to win 5 titles at Queen's Club. It took 3 sets to beat Canadian Milos Raonic, but it was a strong performance by Murray with just a week to go now till the start of Wimbledon. David Ornstein reports.
Andy Murray. Andy Murray striding towards what he hoped would be more history. All of his major individual success has come with Ivan Lendl as his coach. Reunited at Queen's after a 2-year break, Murray wants Lendl to bring the best out of him again. Facing the 6'5" Canadian Milos Raonic was always going to be a tall order. The Canadian had never won a grass court title, but he was on course to do just that when he edged the first set on a tiebreak, much to Murray's frustration. After a poor start to the second set, Murray quickly hits back. This the first time Raonic had been broken all tournament, and the match was soon level. Murray describes this court as the finest of its kind in the world, and he was now producing a performance worthy of gracing it. Raonic simply had no answer, the Murray-Lendl partnership resuming in style, even if the coach made a quick exit.
It was nice of him to stick around for the presentation, so I don't really know where he's off to. It's obviously a good first week back together, and big thanks to all of my team.
Murray was one of 8 men to have won Queen's 4 times. With Wimbledon just a week away, he becomes the first player to do it for a 5th. David Ornstein, BBC News.
Hosts France have topped their group at the European Championship after a 0-0 draw with Switzerland, who finished second and also qualified for the last 16. In the group's other final game, Albania beat Romania 1-0 to finish third, giving them a chance of progressing. Wales and England are preparing for their final group games. Tomorrow, England take on Slovakia, knowing a draw would see them through to the last 16, while Wales need a win against Russia if they're to guarantee progression. Our correspondent Hal Griffith reports from Toulouse.
After waiting so long to reach a major football tournament, Welsh fans aren't ready to leave just yet. But to lose in Toulouse tomorrow would mean going home. Win or draw against Russia, and the journey should continue. having been through the hurt of losing to England last week and letting in an injury-time goal.
Sturridge scores!
The challenge for Wales is to lift themselves up.
The boys did look quite deflated after the England match. It's whether Chris Coleman can lift them.
Too soon to go home to Wales?
It is, definitely. We want to stay a bit longer.
As do the players, ready to move on to the next level, knowing that would exceed expectations.
They've put themselves in a great position, and we just got to go on the pitch again tomorrow without any fear.
This is a team that's already made history. To go beyond the group stages, well, that would be even more momentous. For England, however, tomorrow is more about fine-tuning and deciding who is England's best goal threat, with Jamie Vardy looking to force his way in. Some feel Harry Kane has looked tired.
He's been very, very good in training the last couple of days. I don't think he's suffering more from a season than any other player.
This weekend, Toulouse has been celebrating Celtic culture. Tomorrow, Wales need to make sure this isn't their swan song. Howell Griffith, BBC News.
Nico Rosberg has won the European Grand Prix in Baku. The German had a trouble-free race starting from pole, and he extends his lead in the Drivers' Championship. His Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton was in 5th. And the final round of the US Open Golf is underway at Oakmont. Ireland's Shane Lowry's lead has slipped to 1 shot. He's now 5 under, with Dustin Johnson of the USA a shot back. And that's all the sport. Back to you, Clive.
Catherine, thank you. This weekend has seen the world's first ever live music performance inside a volcano. It was part of a festival being held in Iceland and an attempt by organisers to stand out in a crowded market. And as Chichi Azundu reports, it was a pretty exclusive affair with just 20 ticket holders.
Not your average journey to a festival. For this gig, there are only 2 ways to get to the venue. A hike across lava fields with the changeable Icelandic weather, or, if you can afford it, a short flight. The price for this exclusivity, £1,400.
This volcano erupted 4,500 years ago, but they only allowed the public to have access 5 years ago. The journey to get to this part is via this special lift, and it would be the same, nearly, as me scaling Big Ben 1.5 times.
Down, 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 we're floating down a river, and the river's wild.
Over the last decade, the explosion of festivals means the market is crowded. Annually, tens of thousands happen across Europe alone. And with the summer spent going from one to another, even this is a standout event for the international artist.
Definitely something, original. I mean, when I was asked to do this, my first thought was like, when will I ever get a chance to do something like this ever again? Probably not.
But with the hefty price tag, was it worth it?
Even not knowing what bands were performing, I knew that the experience in and of itself was worth it. Also being a part of something for the first time, obviously, merited it as well. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go out the left back up. I'm going to stay down here.
Events like this aren't cheap to put on either, so it doesn't guarantee festival survival. Above ground, an unforeseen cost. The rapid deterioration of the weather meant an evacuation by the Coast Guard. But the storm didn't dampen spirits. Chichi Azundu, BBC News, at 3 Nugakiga, volcano in Iceland.
That's it. You can see more on all of today's stories on the BBC News channel, but do stay with us on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.